Dan Ives is making some pretty bold claims about the future of tech and the largest company in the world. Check out this bad boy.
I want to ask about the post, because you had that post of them saying, like, congrats, Google, but we're better. They also responded to Michael Burry's takedown of the depreciation thing. It kind of gives a feeling that, like, Nvidia cares about the fact that their share price is falling and they're trying to fight back against it. What do you make of this sort of PR push they're doing?
Yes, I view it a little differently. Look, I mean, at the end of the day, like, there's one godfather bay, and that's Jensen. I think Jensen, right now, it's the recognition that they're transparent. In other words, like, NVIDIA is not trying to hide anything. They're ultimately saying, like, hey, we are out there front and center. And it just comes down to demand and supply is 12-1 for their chips. I mean, I saw that being in Asia for the last 3 weeks. So them congratulating Google, AMD, and others that are going to be successful, it continues to be NVIDIA's world, and everyone else is paying rent. But the reality is that they are not going to sit there and hide behind some PR when it comes to, whether it's Burry or anyone else calling it a bubble. I mean, Jensen's going to be out there front and center because, in my opinion, it continues to only be 10:30 p.m. that AI party that goes to 4 a.m.
But this makes me think a lot of Intel back in the day when we were all rushing out to get the 386 and then the 486 and maybe the Pentium, right? But then Apple was like, why are we giving them these margins? Let's make our own chips. And so did everyone else. And now Intel obviously needs a sort of government bailout in the form of a stake purchase. Why isn't Nvidia vulnerable to the same kind of vertical integration at these, if Meta, if Google, if Amazon all make their own chips, as they are doing?
And it's a great point. And I get the comparison. They're 4 years ahead, in my opinion, of really anyone else in the world, including Huawei, right? So it comes down to, like, now, will there be a gap narrow? Big tech's going to continue. They're going to go and make their chip. You'll see that they'll vertically have that ecosystem. And that's a great thing, because the reality right now is like 12-1, demand and supply. In other words, NVIDIA doesn't have enough chips to ultimately meet demand, right, relative to what we see. But it speaks to my points about the second, third, fourth derivatives of the AI play. Now, you have $3 to $4 trillion that's going to be spent in the next few years. To call this a bubble, it's wrong. As someone like myself that covered tech stocks in the late 90s, it's a 1996 moment, not a 1999 tech bubble moment. That continues to be our view.
How does that $3 to $4 trillion of spending get funded? Famously, Sam Altman was asked on stage a couple of weeks ago how he's going to fund his $1.4 trillion in CapEx plans with only $13 billion in revenue. And he just got so angry that he declined to answer the question, right? I see that, ChatGPT has, right now, I think, they have a $20 charge, right, for the account that I pay double because I have a work and a personal account. But they're not making massive amounts of revenue. 35 million people are signed on, and it could turn out to be like the Friendster or even maybe the MySpace of AI. Where does this revenue come from?
Yeah, well, see, look, today it's still enterprise. When we think about the enterprise, only 3% of companies have gone down the AI path. So when you look and that's just in the US. Globally, that's just actually starting with sovereigns, what we're seeing in Asia. So when I look at OpenAI, I view it as, it's not just going to be a ChatGPT. It's about what that's going to be on the enterprise, consumer. The consumer applications haven't even started relative.
But it has to come quick, right? I mean, remember when the .com bubble burst, it took years and years to make up the revenue that we needed to pay for the fiber outlay in the beginning.
Yeah, and I think for OpenAI, for every dollar that they're spending in terms of the stakes that they're taking, they're just like Nvidia, they'll get $12, $15, $20 back in terms of revenue.
If we're, though, talking about who wins the enterprise race, I mean, wouldn't that be Google, though? They already have relationships with 40,000 companies. And then when it comes to consumers, They know that name so much better. I mean, increasingly, obviously, they know about OpenAI and Sam Altman and ChatGPT, but especially with that enterprise relationship, who's to say that OpenAI wins out on that horse race?
Look, I think there's going to be many winners, right? I mean, from Nvidia on the chip side, when you talk about Microsoft, where they stand on the hyperscale, Oracle, and I think that stock's been way oversold here. But look, the reality is, you go back earlier this year, the New York City cab driver was bearish on Google. Now look at it, because it's my view, it's not just on enterprise with GCP, with Google Cloud, with what's happening on chips along with Broadcom, but also, you look out, they're going to ultimately have that Apple deal. I mean, Apple is going to have to bet on Gemini as their AI partnership, which is another benefit here. So I think it just speaks to our view is that, it's not just about Nvidia. And I believe Nvidia ultimately is a stock that goes much higher here, 225, 250. But it's about the second, third, fourth derivatives playing out across, I think the world. And for the first time in 30 years, the U.S. is ahead of China when it comes to tech.
Now, we've got something special coming up for our most loyal subscribers. We're doing an early release of our new AI course. In this course, you'll go from confused to confidently understanding the key players, the real trends, and exactly what's happening in the world of AI right now and why this matters. Because this is an early access offer just for viewers of this channel, you can grab the entire course right now for a special price of $99. Come Sunday at midnight, the course price will be 2 to 3 times higher. Don't miss a chance to gain instant access, clarity on the AI landscape at the lowest price it will ever be. Check the link in the description. Cheers. Nvidia can't make chips fast enough, and that's actually a good sign. Nvidia's newest Blackwell chips are completely sold out through the end of next year, with tech giants like Meta, Microsoft, Google, and Amazon buying up everything they can get. Companies are so desperate for Nvidia's chips that Nvidia dedicates 85% of their production to just their top 6 customers, leaving everyone else scrambling. The shortage actually got so bad that Nvidia actually cut back on making gaming chips to focus on AI chips because they're way more of a premium. So here's what people miss when they worry about Nvidia's stock dropping. When you have more customers wanting to buy your product than you can possibly make, that's not a problem, that's proof you're winning. Think about it like this. There's a restaurant where you need to wait months to get a reservation. That restaurant isn't struggling, it's the hottest place in town. It's the same thing with Nvidia. Every tech company in the world is basically standing in line begging to buy these chips, and Nvidia is telling them, sorry, we're booked solid for the next year. That's the opposite of a company in trouble. And here's why the shortage actually helps Nvidia stay ahead. When demand is way higher than supply, you don't have to compete on price. You can charge whatever you want because people will pay just to get access to your chips. While other chip makers are lowering prices and offering deals to attract customers, Nvidia can keep prices high because companies literally have no choice. They need these chips to stay competitive in AI, and Nvidia makes the best ones. But the shortage also tells you something bigger about where AI is heading. AI adoption has nearly doubled in just 2 years, with only about 40% of US workers using it at work. That means we're not even close to peak demand yet. Right now, it's mostly the big tech companies buying up all these chips. But as more and more regular companies start using AI for their business, the demand for Nvidia's chips is likely going to get even crazier. We're not at the end of this boom, we're barely at the beginning. The fact that Nvidia can't keep up with demand now, when AI is still in the early stages, tells you just how massive this is going to get. So Nvidia has this crazy demand advantage right now, but Dan Ives brought up a scary comparison that could threaten everything. Remember what happened to Intel when everyone started making their own chips? Dan Ives pointed out that Intel used to completely dominate the computer chip business. Everyone needed Intel's processors. But then companies like Apple decided they didn't want to keep paying Intel's massive prices, so they started designing their own chips. Now Google, Amazon, and Meta are all making their own custom AI chips instead of relying on Nvidia. Industry experts predict that custom chips from companies like Google could grab somewhere around 5 to 6% of the AI chip market soon. This is a comparison that could actually worry Nvidia investors. Intel used to be exactly where Nvidia is now. They were the only game in town, they had everyone locked in, and they were making huge profit margins. Then suddenly companies realized, wait, why are we making Intel rich when we could just make our own chips? And once that trend started, it never stopped. Apple made its own chips and saved billions. Now every major tech company has chip design teams. Intel went from being the king of the hill to basically needing government help to survive. So the big question is Will Nvidia end up like Intel? Are we about to watch history repeat itself again with Google, Amazon, and others eating away at Nvidia's business? On the surface, it looks scary. Google's TPUs are already powering their Gemini AI. Amazon has its own Turanium chips. Meta is designing custom silicon. All the biggest customers are trying to stop depending on Nvidia. That's exactly how Intel's dominance started crumbling. But here's why Dan Ives thinks Nvidia is different, and this is the key point. He says Nvidia is 4 years ahead of everyone else in chip design. 4 years might not sound like much, but in the technology world, that's an eternity. By the time Google perfects their current chip, Nvidia will have 2 more generations of even better chips already out. It's like trying to catch up with a car that's already miles ahead and still speeding up. You can run as fast as you want, but you're never going to close that gap. And there's a second reason Nvidia might avoid Intel's fate. Remember that AI adoption is still super early. Companies are just starting to figure out how to use this technology. About 1/3 of companies are still in the pilot phase, just experimenting with AI. That means the total demand for AI chips could explode way bigger than it is today. So even if Google and Amazon take a chunk of the market for themselves, the whole pie is getting so much bigger that Nvidia can keep growing anyway. It's not a zero-sum game where Nvidia loses every time someone else wins. The market is expanding so fast that there's room for Nvidia to dominate while others succeed. Intel's problem was that the PC market stopped growing, so every chip Apple made was one less chip Intel could sell. But the AI market is just getting started, and Nvidia is positioned to ride that wave even as competition increases. That's the difference between being in a shrinking market versus being in one that's about to explode. One of our clients started with 0 audience. Now they're doing $100,000 months thanks to YouTube. And they're not alone. We've helped 3 businesses hit that level just by growing them a YouTube channel. Want to see how this could work for your business? Book a call with me below.